What a wonderful occasion to be able to announce the next Allman in the Evening, fresh off the Allman in the Evening with Todd Starnes last night, and appreciate that. How about this one? Allman in the Evening featuring Jim Carafano, Genevieve Wood, and Senator Jim Talent at the Forest Park Country Club. Tickets are free, but you got to register at 971talk.com. Buddy, looking forward to that. Just a month away, or less than a month away.
How many missile attacks do you think we'll have between now and then?
Well, see, that's actually a good question. What is your take? I'm just dying to know on what happened last night.
Well, first of all, I think it's going to be great to be out there. I wasn't joking. It is, in a month from now, we're going to have a lot of presidency under our belt. It's going to be tons to talk about, and you can't figure out what's going on in the world by listening to the yahoos on, on television and radio and stuff. And to have people that have been kind of following this stuff really closely, I think it's going to be great. And, stuff like today is a perfect example. Everybody's talking about the wrong story. The story that nobody's really talking about here, which is really important, is this was a very impressive example of crisis decision-making. I mean, whether you like this decision or not, if you look at the 24 hours that they went through, made this decision, the way they implemented it, Nikki Haley in the UN, working the UN, Tillerson, we're organizing the international community. The president meeting with the president of China at the same time he is supervising this. I mean, this is pretty impressive for a group that hasn't even been on the job for a dozen weeks.
So this was interesting. First of all, the president last night, I thought, showed a lot of respect for the American people in being very precise about how this connects to our national security, because that's the big question everybody has. And, of course, you have the Rand Paul standard, which you have to uphold, which is this tied to our national security? And I think he answered the question. He addressed it very well.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think the reality is here is the United States is in that region for a very specific reason. We want to defeat ISIS, right? And when we defeat ISIS, we don't want to leave a space for ISIS to come back. So we got to have a plan for ISIS 2.0. We have to stabilize Iraq. We have to stabilize the refugees in the region so they're not spreading all over the planet. And basically what Assad is doing and the way he's prosecuting that war, that is getting in the way. So what the President of the United States is, he says, dude, get out of my way and let me do my job. And so he sent a very clear message to the Russians and the Syrians that they were interfering in us trying to protect our interests, and that this President of the United States found that unacceptable. And he went through that whole process in 24 hours, which is not too shabby.
And I have a couple of concerns being conveyed by my people here, and these are questions they want answered. One is it for sure that Assad is responsible for the chemical attacks? And number two, does this represent a rollback of the promise of non-interventionism? I was able to address the non-interventionism factor because I do believe that this was, if we go to the regime change route, that's going to be a little more troublesome. But I think this was, as President Trump pointed out, something directly tied to our national security, and he tied it even to the refugee crisis. But do we have actual evidence that Assad did this?
Well, as you know, I don't have a security clearance, and I am on the outside looking in. But here's what I know: the people that say, well, there's no proof he did it. They've offered no proof, right? Whether it's the Russians or the Syrians or anybody else that claimed alternative scenarios, they offered zero proof to prove that. And here's what I do know is we have the capability to do things like we can see where planes left from and where they bombed, and even the kind of stuff they bomb with, and even just getting reports at what went on the ground forensically, you can kind of tell what the logical likely scenario is. So if you're asking me does the United States have the capability of collecting and analyzing the kind of information which would lead you to indicate whether it was an actual attack or a false flag or something, my answer to that is yes. We have the capacity and capability to do that. So when the U.S. government says, well, we're pretty sure, my answer is I kind of believe him. Because this is, very different from the no WMD in Iraq scenario where you're relying on people telling you what's going on. Here, we have the capability through a whole range of intelligence collection, including everything from satellites to listening in on stuff, to hear and know and see a lot of activity. That's very, very different than what people say that's going on, but actually to see things being done. So, yeah, I do believe the U.S. government when they say we're pretty sure he did this.
Well, because if you can go onto a website right now and trace your brother's flight from New York to California, you sure as hell know that our military can have the capability of tracing flights that are popping up in Syria and other places like that.
Right. Yeah. And you have very persistent coverage on these things, and you have evidence on the ground. I mean, the way victims are injured, you can tell whether is that something that was from an attack or from an inadvertent release or something. So
yeah,
I actually do believe. And what's interesting is virtually everybody in the world. Nobody thinks that that the Syrians didn't do this. The only people who claim that the Syrians didn't do this are Syria, Russia, and Iran.
Yeah,
shocker there.
So yeah, right. So now in the offing, we have real quickly. Technically, I was fascinated by the fact that it appears, if you listen to what the president had to say and some of the insiders have to say, that the U.S. gave not only Russia heads up but also Syria. Presumably to make sure that they had some of their people out of the way, that we want to make sure we weren't going to be hitting Russian airplanes and causing an international incident. And I thought that was pretty interesting to find out. And I'm assuming that is what happened.
Well, and that was crucial because the whole intent here is not to escalate conflict, and it's not that this is the first attack and where we're going to march to Damascus or something. This is designed for a very specific reason to damage the capability that Assad had to do those attacks, and to send a signal that kind of activity, which is detrimental to us doing things to try and make the region better, it's just not going to be tolerated. So it was a very calibrated use of force, and therefore I do think it was appropriate and accepted and proportional. I don't think that this is about regime change, that somehow we're going to get on the tanks and march to Damascus. I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't think that this doesn't solve anything. All this does is tell Assad to stay out of the way. We have so much work to do in that region. And again, not a partisan comment, but we spent 8 years making that place worse. Making it better isn't going to happen in 5 minutes.
Right. I totally agree. And really, Jim, really looking forward to seeing you on the 4th of May. This is going to be a great evening, of course, with Genevieve Wood and Senator Talent. That's a powerhouse crew we're going to have there at the Allman Evening Show there at Forest Park Country Club. So it's going to be fabulous, and we'll roll out the red carpet for you, brother.
Yeah, you're going to the beauty and the beast and a senator all in one place.
Well, it'll be fun, and we can't wait to see you. And thanks so much for today, buddy.
All right, brother.
All right, at JJ Carafano on Twitter.